again, codependency is a broad subject. It's on a spectrum. You can be, severe codependent, or you can have a touch of it, or it's progressive, and it is, it can be deadly, because how it can be deadly for codependents is if they don't take care of themselves. They don't have a lot of self-care, and they will break down in stress-related illnesses and try to take on the world and the world's problems, and particularly starting with their family and their children and their husband and their whoever, I jokingly say that my territory was about 100-mile radius from around me. I mean, I was a severe codependent and really did not know what I was doing. I was just, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, and what that means is, for me as a child, I started doing things that adults should be doing, that was not age appropriate for a child, like taking care of my mother and doing, driving at age 10, paying bills, all of that. And it's not age appropriate for children to do those things. But what I got out of that as a child is, well, look what you can do. Look how, you can take care of mama. Please don't leave me. Don't go to school. I need you. Stay here with me. And that was embedded in my brain. And then my dad would say, you don't need to go anywhere. You need to stay here with the old lady. And, and that became a job for me. And then, we go toward, when we marry someone, we go toward what's familiar. Now, I had no idea that my husband, that we were married 51 years, he passed away 8 years ago this month. I had no idea. We hear that we marry one parent and become the other one, Well, I married my mother, and he didn't look anything like my mother, but what he had was an alcohol problem, and I thought I could fix him because I didn't get my mother fixed. I didn't get my job completed, so I thought I have a second chance with him. I could take care of him, and that went on for many years. I was telling my friend Misty yesterday that when I was in the hospital with my oldest daughter, I was so codependent and such a caretaker that I would lay out my husband's clothes of a morning, lay out his socks and his underwear, and polish his shoes the night before, stupid stuff. So when I was in the hospital having a baby, he came up there and he said, I know they're there somewhere, but where do you keep my socks and t-shirts and underwear? He didn't even open the drawers to look because he thought they were all, came laid out on the bed all ready for him, But that's how I got my good feelings about myself, was taking care of others. And then they wouldn't give me what I thought I needed from them, or they wouldn't give me what I wanted. They didn't praise me. They didn't put me up on a pedestal. They didn't just worship me. They just, expected more out of me. And then I'd get mad at them. I'd get mad at them because I wouldn't get what I thought I needed or deserved from those people that I was giving my all to, bless my heart. By the way, that's the Al-Anon salute, bless my heart. And so when you grow up like that, you become, or I became, a caretaker. And so a lot of codependence, it starts early in childhood. And so, this audience is y'all are pretty savvy on codependency. And so I want to go over just a few highlights if you have forgotten what it is. And it is different from, certainly from kindness, and I want to talk about kindness later. But what codependency is when you feel responsible for other people's feelings and choices. You try to rescue them, fix them, make them feel better, or solve their problems. That's That's what codependency is. When we can look at somebody and just automatically know what they need and rush in there to do it for them, that is codependency. And, you know, a lot of times, I mean, most times people don't like that. And so we feel very frustrated or resentful when others don't want our advice or our help. We derive a sense of purpose from taking care of others. That was my purpose on the face of the earth, was taking care of other people. And that, you know, not only in my, you know, with my children and bonus children, I had a blended family of 7 kids, and I thought it was my job to do everything for everybody because I was a human doer, and I thought if I didn't do for you, if I didn't take care of people, they wouldn't want me. If I didn't do something for you, you wouldn't want me around. And that is, so not true. And that brings up that most codependents have low self-esteem, very low self-esteem, and we get our self-esteem from helping others. And when they don't give us back what we expect, then that usually brings up the anger. Now, you know, for me, my father was very much a rager, and I carried his rage. And I was a very angry woman, and I'm not proud of that. I did a lot of damage to people with my anger, and I had my last rage attack 20 years ago, and by the grace of God, I haven't had another one. And he removed that from my psyche. Now, I guess I can get angry. I can get angry at things. You know, I got angry 4 days back in February of doing without, power and water. I mean, I was a little angry then, but, I'm not a rager anymore. And so I would do things for other people, and then they wouldn't, praise me or wouldn't give me what I thought I wanted. And then sometime during that friendship, I would get mad at them and I would rage at them. And when you rage at people, or when I would rage at people, they start backing off. They get scared of you. So people were scared of me. I even had employees talk about how, you intimidate me so much. Well, how I intimidated them, I didn't treat them very nice. If they did something I didn't like, I couldn't talk to them in a normal tone of voice. I would rage at them. I took it personal, what their job performance was. And it didn't have anything to do with me, It had everything to do with their job performance, but I did a lot of abuse with my rage. But anyway, so another thing about codependency is relationships can have an obsessive quality. Most codependents, we take hostages. We don't have friends. We take hostages, and we bind them to us out of caretaking. And, and then if they happen to find a new friend, codependents are not inclusive. They are, hold everybody, not all codependents, I did. When you had a friend, I just hold them so close, and I didn't want them to be friends with anybody else. It's that obsessive quality. And then we have difficulty asking for help. Now, I would not ask people for help for anything. Now, I would help other people till hell froze over, but I could not ask for help. I'm better about that today. I'm better. It's still not real easy for me to ask for help, but I can. I mean, that's something I've had to work on. And I know that is a part of overdeveloped pride, thinking I can do it by myself. Thank you very much. And then, the flip side of that, when we don't ask loved ones or people around us to help us when we really need help, we're depriving them of a blessing. And if they don't want to help, all they have to say is no. If they're healthy, they are going to say yes. When they say yes, they're going to do whatever you ask. And if they can't do it, they'll say no if you're around healthy people. But when we don't ask for help, that's part of, we are, and not allowing them to have the blessing of helping. So, and then this is a big one. Fear of abandonment and rejection, and people pleasing and tolerating mistreatment. You know, a good codependent will put up with behavior that healthy people would no more dream of putting up with. You know, they put up with abusive behavior and then become abusers themselves. And it's that fear of abandonment and rejection. And so we talk about, Pia Melody gave us this about how codependence is set up in childhood from any form of abandonment, neglect, or abuse. They're set up in childhood from abandonment, neglect, or abuse. It's that codependence. And then we began to form characteristics that we learn in childhood just to survive. One of the things I learned in childhood, taking care of an alcoholic mother, I learned real quick how to lie. I would lie for people. Maybe she had something to do, and I would call and lie for her. When my mother's sick, she was sick, but anyway, I learned to lie in that household. And what I was told over and over, that's what is said or done in this house stays in this house. You do not tell anyone outside. And, today I hope that school teachers are more aware and alert of children when they have long-term absences, or I hope they can realize that things are going on in that home. No one ever intervened with us, but maybe they probably didn't have CPS or anything back then, but I hope that they will watch out for those things today, in today's time, with children that are living in any form of severe dysfunction. And then most codependents are hard-working people. They're over-responsible and may give to the point of exhaustion and resentment. And that's what gets codependence. A lot of codependents are very capable. They're capable of their job. If they don't know something, they'll research it because they do not want to be embarrassed about not knowing something. So they'll research it and find out what they need to do, and they'll work and work and work, and then just work themselves to death. And then if they don't get the appropriate, well, thank you, you did such a wonderful job, If they don't get that, then they get a resentment, and they get mad at you for not acknowledging it. And then most of your codependents are perfectionists or have perfectionistic tendencies, where they never feel like they get the job done good enough. It's not up to their standards, and they want to do the best job. And I'll tell you, codependency in the workplace will break that workplace down. Codependency in the workplace, and that is a whole nother subject, and how it can break down a whole system. I've told this before, but I'll tell it again since I'm talking about codependency. Is many years ago, I was working up at Wiley, Texas, North Dallas, with a adolescent group treatment center. I'd go up there once a month and do lectures on eating disorders in adolescents. And anyway, I met a woman up there that had just written a book, Diane Fassel. She wrote the book, Working Ourselves to Death. And I thought, well, and then in talking with her up there, and she was there at that treatment center for a few days to go in and do an evaluation of the treatment center and the staff. And I thought, well, great, that'd be a great idea. I'll bring her here. So I brought Diane Fassel, who wrote the book, Working Ourselves to Death. I brought her to Shays, and she stayed a couple of days, and we met, and I encouraged all the staff to be honest with her, and whatever she asked, and all. And so at the last day, at the end of the second day, then she brought all of us back together, and she did a closing, overview of what her findings were. Bottom line, it was almost like an intervention on me, because what they came up with was that I was a work addict, and that I would give them things to do, jobs, and then if they didn't do it quick enough, fast enough, good enough, I'd take the job away from them and then get mad at them, and that was continuous. And so, I paid for my own intervention on work addiction, but that opened my eyes, and that, I'd like to say I had just a quick turnaround, a quick recovery in that. I didn't, but at least it was a beginning for me to start seeing how I was working myself to death. And I expected my employees to work themselves to death. How dare you? And so, but actually, I really didn't, because when we came out here, and we still hold to this, that our employees will not work over 38, 40 hours a week, because beyond that, it is work addiction. So, and then, another thing which is big with codependence is being able to say no, setting boundaries, being assertive, and asking for what you need or want. Now, codependence, like I was talking about, we can be aggressive. We can shout out orders to other people. But being assertive and being aggressive is two different things. Being assertive is asking for what you need. And if it's something that you really believe in, and you checked it out with other people, and you really believe in it, and you're asking someone, being assertive, you keep asking until you hear the word no. Until you hear the word yes. If they keep saying no, if you really have enough self-esteem on board to ask for what you need, be assertive enough to keep asking and keep asking, like a broken record. No, I hear you're saying no, and this is what I need. This is what I need. Anyway, codependents can't do that. They cannot. They don't know how to set healthy boundaries and be assertive. And, another thing is most codependents are afraid of conflict. Now, I lived in conflict all of my life. So I wasn't so afraid of it. For me, I wasn't afraid of it. I created it, because the system that I came out of is that something happened, you had a problem, and then, whatever the problem was, mother was sick again, mother was drunk, mother was this, mother was that, my dad was hollering and screaming. So that's what you did. You had a problem, and you hollered and screamed and cussed and fussed, and then, after a while, you kind of kissed and made up and went on. Nothing was ever resolved. And so I got pretty addicted to conflict. I thought that's how people showed you love. If they could get really mad and then back down and say, well, I love you. Never know I'm sorry, but no amends ever made, no changed behavior at all. And so some codependents are afraid of conflict. Some absolutely thrive on conflict. It's on that spectrum, that all or nothing deal. And then, having trouble trusting others, and being emotional vulnerable. My dad, if he said it once, he said it 1 million times. You can't trust anybody outside that front door. The only people you can trust in the world is inside this house. Well, I'll tell you, those are the ones that I didn't need to trust. That's where all the abuse came from. So you grow up not trusting people. And then when you don't trust, then a lot of times it sets yourself up to be emotional vulnerable. That goes either way. You can be over trusting or not trusting at all. And then you learn to suppress your feelings and absorb other people's feelings. This is a biggie. For codependents, think about it. We will push our own feelings down, but we can tell you how you're feeling. We can tell by the way you look, the way you raise your eyebrow, the way you kind of turn that lip up or whatever, good codependents can tell they read people, and how they're feeling. And we have no clue about how we're feeling, because codependents are always looking out there for their good feelings or their bad feelings. And then, which this is a given, codependents, I've already mentioned it, have majority of the time have low self-esteem, feel unlovable, and not good enough. Now, having that low self-esteem, but then so we overcompensate and we fool people a lot of times, that we can, suit up and show up at places like, I volunteered at the school all of the time. I didn't think Wiley Elementary or junior high or high school could exist when my kids grew up, because I was there all the time volunteering. They had a rule that in grade school you could only be a room mother in one room. They made an exception for me. I could be a room mother in all four, because the teachers requested me, because I did so much. I did extravagant things because I wanted that recognition, and so, but I never felt good enough. I never felt like I achieved anything, and so I overachieved. I overdid. And then on the other hand, there's people who are codependent that can't get out of their house. They can't take action. And so the last one on this is feel the need to control and have a hard time adjusting when things don't go according to plan or the way they want them to go. Codependents have a hard time adjusting when plans change. And if they feel like that they're not in control. Control is the number one thing for codependency. And so I just want to read you a few more, because there are, others often accuse, if in the family, if people ever accuse you of meddling in their business, or if they can accuse you of crossing the line and trying to control anything, and you believe that you're right, you might be codependent. If they're saying that you are crossing the line and you're meddling in our business. If you hear that phrase, you can mark it down. You are crossing the line. As parents and grandparents and great-grandparents today, for me, I don't invade my adult children's privacy. I would no more go to their house and open the door and walk in without being invited. I don't do that. I don't assume that anyone just wants the joy of my presence without being invited, and that's part of that that's part of being able to set boundaries. And then a big one is solving other people's problems, Like I said, my radius was about 100-mile radius around Abilene. People would come to me, they would talk to somebody that they knew and that I had told them something, and then they would come to me and want me to solve their problems. This was even before, Al-Anon or anything. I was busy helping other people solve their problems, whether it was at church, whether it was at school. I couldn't solve my own problems in my own marriage, in my own life, but by God, I could solve yours. All you had to do is come to me and I'll tell you what to do. That is so self-centered, and that is control and codependency to the max. I feel shame when I'm even telling you that, but it really puffed me up. I loved it. I love that feeling. Strangers would call me and they'd say, I have this friend so-and-so and so-and-so that said that they talked to you in the beauty shop and you said this and this and that, and it really helped them. Can I come talk to you? And I'd let them. Now, that was before I was a counselor, because it made me feel good to help them. And Lord, I needed help myself. But anyway, that's solving other people's problems. And then what we began to do we have strings attached to all of that, and we want them to give something back to us, and particularly what we want them to do is follow our advice. We want them to follow our instructions, and then if they don't, we feel like they're failures and we are too. And then, once you start doing this, the word gets out. Needy people will be drawn to you. I mean, people will start coming to you, needy people. They can kind of find a codependent out. I mean, if there's 10 people standing up, 9 healthy and 1 codependent, those needy people will go to that codependent every time. And codependents thrive on that. They thrive. That's how they get their good feelings about themselves. And then, you know, what happens then is that we're often judgmental. I was talking about that with a friend yesterday. Then the difference between having a judgment call about something and being judgmental. And in today, I mean, I promise, and so help me, if y'all catch me judging somebody, let me know. But I can have a judgment call. I can, you know, look at a situation and have a healthy judgment call about, you know, that's something I wouldn't want to do. But I don't judge others. And I used to judge others. I mean, you wouldn't believe. I put myself up there and I judged everybody's behavior so it would make me look better. Sometimes I kept it to myself, but most of the time I didn't. I tell it to others. So, the bottom line is the lack of love for ourselves. You know, when a codependent is focusing on the outside and trying to get their good feelings about themselves outside themselves, or their bad feelings about themselves, what it is the lack of love for ourselves. And that starts at the very base. You know, God loves us. We are His kids. We are His children. And I think about, just a bit. I think about my own children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, how much I love them. And the God of my understanding has the capacity to love me much more and love all of us much more than we love our children. So why do we doubt our love for ourselves? I hated my own guts before I found recovery. And so what I was continuing to do is put down God's handiwork. So what it is about looking for a balance. And, you know, being too kind is giving yourself away to others. Now, I'm not saying not be kind. Be kind in all things. Show love in every way. And I'll tell you, I had to learn how to do that. I was raised in a house where we wasn't shown love, we were shown hate, and that's learned behavior. And I have to practice every day. And I use Walmart checkers as a guidepost for me a lot of times. You know, like I was at Walmart yesterday, and there's this young man that was checking me out. He was young. I hope he was in college, I don't know, but he was very overweight, and he just looked tired. He just looked so tired. And, you know, I had on my mask. He had on his mask. I tried to smile. I don't know if he smiled or not. But his name was, my friend Misty is laughing at, but his name was Dominique. And that's an unusual name. And I said his name out loud, and he looked up. I'll tell you, if you really want to be kind to someone, speak their name out loud. The word that most of us as human beings love to hear the most is the sound of our own name. You know, getting back to my father, bless his heart, he was so sick. He didn't like anyone that wasn't white complected. And so I can't remember a time that he called me by my name, Tennie. He called me the black baby. So anyway, go back to this young man that was checking my groceries, and I called his name out loud, and he kind of perked up. And then I asked him where his name came from. I just started having a conversation with him. What I wanted to tell him is I wanted to give him a speech about customer friendliness and how he needed to, you know, give his employer that he needed to be a shining example. I mean, he wasn't being very nice to his customers, I wanted to give him that speech, and in the past I would have. That's none of my business. What was my business yesterday was to say something that might, when I left that check stand, that might leave that young man feeling a little better than he was before I got there, And what I did is I called his name out loud. And then I asked him where he got his name, and I said, oh, that's a powerful name. And so that's a little bit of kindness, just a little bit. And, we're going to get back whatever we put out in the universe. I mean, you put it out there, guess what? It's going to find a way back to you. You keep putting that negative stuff, I mean, and I had so many bad, awful, ugly people to me years ago, because that's what I put out, and then that's what I'd get back. I'd make them mad, and they'd give it back to me. So when you put out the good stuff, guess what? We get back the good stuff. Kindness is a gentleness, and it's gentleness, it's care, it's being helpful with no strings attached. While codependency keeps you tied and dependent to the other person for the good or the bad feelings about yourself. I'm going to read that to you again. Kindness is gentleness, it is care and helpfulness without no strings attached, while codependency keeps you tied and bound and dependent to the other person for your good or bad feelings about yourself, even your identity. Even your identity. When we get our good and bad feelings about ourselves, outside ourselves, we're turning our will and our life over to someone else instead of God. But when we're being kind, and when I think of kindness, I live in a town of 463 people. There's a lot of good people here. And we have a few old sore heads, but basically we've got a lot of good people. And how we saw that is during that 4 days, and we were that lockdown, we were all freezing. And there was 3 of the elders that did freeze to death in this little town. One of them outside and 2 in the... Anyway, but I'll tell you, I think of the men and the families that came by shades that helped us. They didn't have to do that. They got out in that weather. Cody Cox, and he's the one that I can remember his name because he's so friendly. He brought water, and other friends of his came by, brought us water, asked us if we needed anything else. Misty said, well, we need some paper goods. I'll tell you, it wasn't any time he brought back, a huge thing of paper goods. He said, well, I just went and stole these from the Church of Christ. I'm sure you have a key to the Church of Christ church, but anyway, that's kindness. And then here came a family, a man and a woman with 2 little kids. And I'll tell you what, those parents were teaching those children kindness. And they came by and left us water and checked to see if we needed anything. And then there was some people up in Amarillo that their daughter works for us. And they drove from Amarillo down here to bring a generator for our kitchen, in our dorm. Not the dorm, because all the clients had to sleep on the floor in the conference room during that cold weather. But the kindness that people showed to us through that time meant the world to us. And to think of that, that family particularly, that young man and woman, and those 2 children. Those children were out unloading that water. What a lesson for those children. What a lesson. To care enough about your community to go deliver water to people, So kindness, we cannot be too kind. Now we can be too much of a caregiver. We can take care of people till we wear them out and ourselves too. And so a good guideline for codependence is to ask if you can help. And then if they say no, take it as no. Now sometimes if you see a need, like those people saw a need and they brought it to us, we didn't have to ask. And so if you see a need in your community and you can do something for someone else without a string attached, go do it. Now the best thing for people that addicts like most of us are, the best thing is do something. And, you know, we hear this in the program. This is an old Al-Anon principle, is to do something for someone else every day without being found out. Do it for someone else. Do something. It doesn't have to be anything big, something little, without being found out. You know, after I posted on the my Facebook, you know, during y'all have heard the saga of my greenhouse. You know, I had over 200 plants. Some of them had over 40 years. Every one of them died. Every one of them died. And I've got a greenhouse full of dead plants. And I've grieved them, but haven't grieved them a lot. All I can think about is those, you know, those poor folks that froze. You know, none of us, you know, were physically harmed. We didn't lose the pet or anything. I hated to lose the flowers, but that's not the end of my life with the flowers. But after the storm broke, and about a week later, I came home one day, and there was two beautiful hanging baskets on my front porch, and there was a note on it, and it said, "Thank you for all you do for others." I think that's what it said. "Thank you for all you do for others," and they didn't sign their name. That is how you give to, and so what that makes me wonder is who gave it. I kind of have an idea who it did, who gave it. I think it was Cody Cox. I don't know. It may not have been. But then every one time I look at someone in Buffalo Gap, I think, are you that nice person that brought me those flowers? Are you that nice person? Are you that nice? I don't ask them, but I just look at them and I think, that was a generous offer, you know, to do that. And boy, it sparked joy in my heart that morning to see those pretty flowers. And I hope to have them for the next 40 years, for the next years, you know, because I will get the greenhouse fixed. I will use it next winter, and I hope that those two plants stay with me for as long as I stay around. So, be kind to yourselves, and kindness means to love your neighbor. You know, the Bible says this, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, good gosh almighty, if we loved our neighbors like we loved ourselves when we were in the addiction, I mean, we just kill off everybody, because most addicts, we hate our own guts. So, you know, it has to start with us. We have to start loving ourselves. And I will tell you, it does start with us, but it also has to start with someone else, someone loving us in spite of ourselves. And there was a woman put in my life, her name was Pat Huber, and she has 55 years of sobriety now. But Pat loved me into wellness. She met me at a time that I wasn't lovable. I was not lovable. And I often ask her, I said, why do you put up with me? Why do you keep trying to help me? And she said, it's none of my business. She said, God put a love for you in my heart, and my job is just to give it to you. I don't know why he chose you, but my job is just to give it to you. She worked out of town. She was a nurse, and she had a big old I don't know how many counties, but she worked out of town a lot. It was before a cell phone. And she would call me on her phone, on a pay phone to check on me. And I would think, what does she want out of me? And I would ask her, what do you want? She said, nothing. I just want to love you. And she taught me what love was. You know, what love is kind. It is not jealous. It's not puffed up.
It's patient.
It hardly notices when others do it wrong. And I notice when everybody did me wrong. I don't today. I don't pay attention. But what I do pay attention to is kindness. And I attempt to the best of my ability to be kind to everyone I see. And it is sure a much better way to live. So that is about what I have this morning. We can talk about codependency till this time next week, because it is a deep well. It's a deep subject. It is hard to recover from. It is embedded in our brain. But I'll tell you, I'm facing a lot of people here that I'm looking at y'all, that all of you are in stages of really good recovery from codependency. And recovery from codependency has to be very intentional, just like recovery from any addiction. We get addicted to, we have an abnormal obsession and addiction to people and taking care of people and making them like us. And so we have to be very intentional in our recovery from codependency and have to stop and ask ourselves, because we can rush in and take care of people without them ever asking. And that is, violating other people's boundaries. And so, a good guideline is really to ask, wait, particularly with family members, wait until you're asked for help, and then you can say yes or no. And then, look around in your community, and where there's some help that is needed, do those things for others without getting found out. So anyway, y'all talk to me, because I've seen some people out here that have had a lot of good recovery and are in the early stages of recovery from codependency and some late stages. So it's your turn. Ask questions or visit or tell us what you do to help your codependency, or not to help it get better, but to be aware of it. And when when you're actually being caring for another person and being kind, or when you're caretaking. Because I'll end with this: anytime that we rush in and do something for someone else that they're capable of doing for themselves, where there are a 2 or 3 year old child trying to put on their shoes, or a teenager learning how to navigate the real world, when we take those responsibilities away from them and rush in and do them ourselves, or anyone, what we're saying is, you don't have enough sense to do this. I have to do it for you. And what we're saying is, I am smarter than you are. And so it really, will tell a child that they're not capable of putting on their shoes at age 2 or 3. And guess what? They are. And how they learn to do them, they put them on the wrong foot several times. And then after a while, when they get hurt, they change. And they learn by doing. And when codependents rush in and take over those jobs, it takes the dignity away from the person. So that's all I have. It's up to you. Okay, who's in the first?
Diane.